Ladies and gentlemen, let's begin the conference with the first keynote address, and it is titled The Top 10 Uses for Function Points in Mature Software Organizations. Please join me in putting your hands together for Ms. Carol Deckers, President of Quality Technology Plus, Deeper Silicon.
Good morning. Is the microphone working? Everyone can hear me in the back? Okay, good. It's my pleasure to be in Kuala Lumpur. This is my first visit to Malaysia outside of the airport. About 10 years ago, I had an overnight at the airport courtesy of Cathay Pacific, and I never left the airport because I slept. So that was all I saw of Kuala back then. So I'd like to thank Ms. Dura and Softtech for inviting me and having me here. Now this may be a little bit outside of software testing as a service. And you may wonder, why are you here? Why should you listen to me at all? Because you may say that function points and measurement is not something you need to know anything about. But I'd like to challenge you to open up your minds for the next hour, because I believe software testers really hold the key to the future. You are some of the leaders, and you may not even realize it yet, because you get involved at the beginning. You get involved with the customers, with the requirements, with making sure that there is traceability all the way through the process. And then you test it. And you're really the keys. You're the ones that find the disasters. You're the ones that really, truly have the customer in mind and make sure that the software is going to work, or that you will break it before it gets to the customer. So I believe that you are really some of the leaders of the future of this profession, of the IT profession overall. Can you open your minds just for the next hour? How many are willing to do that? How many people would be willing to just open your minds and consider that you're not just a tester right now? Can you do that? Okay. There's a few that aren't willing. We will see. I could say you're like my American audiences. My background, I'm a certified function point specialist fellow, which means that I've held the honor of holding the certification for more than 20 years. I'm a project management professional. I'm a professional engineer in Canada. I'm the Director of Communications and Marketing right now for the International Function Point Users Group, which is a 3-year term. And in 1998 to 99, I was actually president of the organization. So I'm kind of on the recycling version. What you may not know is I was the first president of the American Software Testing Qualifications Board. I was the first one. I've got the basic level. I'm also an Agile Expert certified. I've been involved in international standards on behalf of the International Function Point Users Group since 1994. And I know some of you were probably born in 1994. I don't want to know who you are. So we're going to be talking a little bit about where function points, what they are. How many people know exactly what function points are? Okay, a few people. That could be dangerous. So for an agenda, we're going to talk a little bit about some basic function point concepts. I want to talk a little bit about where Agile fits with function points and does it. Then we're going to get into the top 10 uses of function points by what I would consider mature organizations. Because if you're not doing any measurement at all, function points will never fit in. And steps to a sustainable measurement program. There are so many companies that start measurement and never finish. Measurement can be very expensive. Measurement, if not done right, can cause damage to an organization. If you go and you just measure anything that is easy, you're not going to win. And then we'll have, hopefully, time for questions and answers. So my company, we've had, I've spoken in 30 countries. That's one of the beauties of being involved in international standards for a number of years. I've got a lot of different clients from a lot of different industries. And you may recognize one or two. Channel 4 is on the bottom. Some of you may recognize Channel 4. It's a major organization in London, which does a lot of pop music and is generally for millennials. So let's get into some basic concepts. First, I'd like to give you a little bit of a history lesson. If you go back to the 1970s, and I know some of you, this is like way ancient history. But in the 1970s, Fred Brooks came out with the Mythical Man Month in 1975, and his famous saying was that you cannot manage by squishing software into 1-month segments. And his very famous but somewhat now politically incorrect statement was, if you think about it, you cannot take 9 women for 1 month each to make a baby. That may be politically incorrect. I know in the United States it's a little bit politically incorrect right now. In the 70s, the Putnam parametric estimation model, which is the basis for SLIM, came out. We really had COBOL and Fortran, maybe a little bit of Ada, and we really had the very first software development lifecycle models that came out. So those are the 1970s. In the 1980s, Barry Beam published his Software Engineering Economics, and people started to take a look at the fact that software costs money. The International Function Point Users Group was formed in 1986 with our bylaws coming into fruition in 1987. At the same time, a lot of different metrics groups were formed. The Japanese Function Point Users Group, the Korean Software Measurement Association, the Spanish group, the Italian group. There were methods that started to be published. And originally in the 70s, at the very end of 1978-79, Alan Albrecht published the very first method that became known as function point analysis. At the same time, Mark II was published as another method. Feature points, Capers-Jones came out with feature points. Parametric estimating models started coming out, and Kokomo II was published. In the 1990s, we started getting involved in actually standardizing function points. And in 1998, we published a series of standards called 14143-1 through 14143-6, which is 6 framework standards for what became known as functional size measurement. How do we measure the functional size of software? Brazil, Italy, and the Korean governments started using function points and started actually imposing that you must use function points in order to do publicly tendered software contracts. National metrics groups were growing. We introduced the International Software Benchmarking Standards Group, ISBSG, or ICE bags, as it is affectionately referred to. Capers published in Scientific American. Can you imagine? Scientific American in 1998 had an article on function points. It was mainstream, or so we thought. But today, some people either love function points or hate them or think they know everything about them. Watts-Humphrey came out with Managing the Software Process, which became the basis for the Capability Maturity Model integration. In the 2000s, IFPUG and other functional size measurement methods actually became published, and we now have 5 international standards for the different methods, the different ways of measuring functional size. IFPUG published a couple of textbooks, Advice from the Experts on Software Measurement. Something called Southern Scope was established in Australia, and Northern Scope was established in Finland. IFPUG released a second method called SNAP, which is the Software Non-Functional Assessment Process, which now gives you a size for your non-functional size. And what are we doing now? IFPUG 4.3.1, which is the latest method, came out in 2010. Malaysia adopted function points. We now have an IEEE publicly available requisition or standard that is being developed for SNAP. And this is the 30th year of the International Function Point Users Group. So we've declared it to be the International Year of Software Measurement, and we'd like to invite all of you to come and join us in Cleveland from September 13th to 15th, where we have 2 days of workshops and 1 day of a conference. And it happens to be in the same city as the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, in case anybody is interested. But we'd like to invite you to come and learn and share with us and learn what's going on in the field of software metrics. So that's kind of a history lesson. That gives you kind of where function points started to where we are today. So let's look at some basic terminology, and these come from the ISO IEC 14143-1, which you don't need to remember. Functional size measurement, definition of concepts. So what is functional size measurement? It's the process of measuring functional size. Now, if you've never been involved in ISO standards, you'll see that it's very precise. It's like creating dictionaries. Functional size is a size of software derived by quantifying the functional user requirements. Okay, what are functional user requirements? They're a subset of user requirements. The functional user requirements represent the user practices and procedures that the software must perform to fulfill the user's needs. They exclude quality and any technical requirements. Sounds pretty technical, doesn't it? And function points are the unit of measure that's used. So if I have a laundry list of all the requirements that a user has for software, some of them will tell me what the software will do. Those will be quantified by function points. So let's take a look a little bit closer. Function points to me are similar to square feet or square meters for software. Function points quantify the what the software will do. I don't want to know how the software will do it. I don't want to know how it will be built. It's purely what are the business practices and procedures that the software will do. So where does function points fit in? And this, to me, was my aha moment of my career. Do you remember Tom Peters? I don't know. Tom Peters came out with a number of different books, and he said he had some aha moments where it was as if information came down from the sky and enlightened him. Well, my maybe Buddha moment was when I discovered this. Where do function points really fit in? Well, we've got functional user requirements, what the software will do. We have non-functional user requirements, and we have technical requirements. So the first two that I put a dotted line around really are the user problem to be solved. What am I going to build? What do I need to have built? The technical requirements are how am I going to build the solution? That's something that exists in the developer domain. They all come together in project requirements. So let's take a look at the first one. The functional user requirements are really what the software must do, and it's kind of like a floor plan for software. So if I said to you, I have a building that is going to have 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, and maybe a garage. Could I size it? Yes, I can take a look at it and I can say, okay, it looks like 1,000 square feet or 30 square meters. Does that tell me all I need to know to do a good estimate? No, because what if it's a hospital versus an apartment building? Does that make a difference? Absolutely. But if I can tell you that it's 1,000 square feet or 30 square meters, does that tell you something? Yeah, it's a lot better than saying it's big, or it's bigger, or it's like really big. And that's a lot of times the way people still quantify even today, is it's a big system, or it's gonna be a large project. Well, that doesn't cut it anymore. We take a look and we assess the functionality in terms of inputs, outputs, queries, and data stores. And the size is the functional size in units of function points. Now, there are 5, as I mentioned, 5 international methods that ISO has identified and said, these are ways that we can quantify the functional size of software. So some people ask me, which is the preferred way? What should we do? Should we use FISMA from Finland? Should we use NESMA from the Netherlands? Should we use the International Function Point Users Group method? Should we use COSMIC? What should we use? I was at a conference in Slovenia a number of years ago, and it was a project management and cost estimation, construction cost estimators. And the construction cost estimators were fighting. I thought, this is interesting. They were fighting how to measure the size of a floor plan. They were saying, some would say, measure it from the outside wall space. Others were saying, oh, no, we should measure it the outside wall space minus the inside wall space divided by 2. Other people were saying, well, what about a staircase? If I have stairs, do I count square feet on the main floor and on the second floor? What do you think I should do? And they were arguing. And I sat back and I smiled because I thought, this is function points. This is exactly the same thing that we argue about. The key thing is, whatever method you choose to use, be consistent. That's the most important thing. Just be consistent in how you measure, because consistency is key. So that's where functional size fits. The non-functional user requirements, now these are really important. And Barry Beam and Bill Perry of the Quality Assurance Institute both will tell you that the cost implied by non-functional requirements can double the cost of a project. So the non-functional user requirements are how the software must perform. Those used to be covered by something called ISO 9126, which was internal aspects of quality, external aspects of quality, and quality in use. And it's now been replaced by an entire series of ISO standards called SQUARE. The Function Point Users Group used to cover this with something called the Value Adjustment Factor, which has now been replaced by something called snap points. When we've got an estimating equation, they may go in as parameters. These include all of the ilities. Does it have to be maintainable? So maintainability, portability, reliability, all of those things are similar to an international building code. So if I'm going to build my 1,000 square foot or 30 square meter building in Malaysia or in Alaska, it's still going to be the same size, correct? There's differences though, correct? Or if I build it in Florida, then I'm going to have to worry about the materials and how it will withstand cyclones or hurricanes. So that's my building code. So my non-functional size is either covered by the value adjustment factor or by snap points or by parameters. They're not covered by function points. The technical requirements, that's my third type. So the first 2 are my user requirements. Now I'm looking at my technical requirements. It's how the software will be built, including my architecture, my environment, my programming language, whether I'm going to build something using agile methods or waterfall methods or spiral. It's not part of my software product size. It's part of my project requirements. It's going to increase my costs, but it is not part of my software product size. So in terms of ISO IEC standards, we have the entire series, the 14143-1 through 6. Those are framework standards that ISO has set up. I've participated in them. And they really tell you what can be called functional size. IFPUG 4.3.1 unadjusted is a standard, and that's what I'm going to be teaching about in the tutorial sessions. And there's 4 other methods. They quantify the software functionality a little bit differently, but they're all good methods. Quality measurement is covered by the SQUARE series of standards, which is the ISO IEC 25000. Oops. And then we've got a lot of process standards, including, as some of you may be aware, 12207, the Software Engineering Body of Knowledge, which is a software at SWBOC. There are testing standards that have come out of ISO. and the software measurement framework, which is ISO IEC 15939. There's a lot of standards in place. So what about Agile? People ask me, they say, well, we're doing Agile development. Can we use function points? And what happens a lot of times is the software product size, when you take a look at what is actually developed at the end of all my sprints, it will be the same as if I used waterfall. If I take a look at what's in place, I can measure that. But Agile delivery is done a lot of times in sprints. So I've had people say, oh, guess what? I've got a function point generation machine because I want to count every single sprint in terms of how many function points are developed. That's like saying partial square feet. If I deliver 5 square feet, I get to count it now, and then if I go and I enhance it in the next sprint, I get to count it again? No. Consistency in measurement, whether you're doing Agile, waterfall, or hybrid, or spiral, has to be consistent. So it's kind of like this. My waterfall development, I could draw 3 little circles there, and I could see how initially I might have 1,000 function points. I might enhance that in a renovation project, and that would be the second circle, so you can see the overlap. And the third one, the third release, gives me additional functionality. So I can take a look and add that all up. Agile developers will say to me, oh, but see all those little teeny tiny circles? We want to make those additive over and over and over. That's not the way it works. So if you're going to use function points or software development, any sort of metrics, you want to be consistent. Because Agile processes are not 100 times more efficient and more effective and more delivery than waterfall. When you look at what comes out in terms of a software product, we need to be measuring consistently. So let's take a look at the top 10 function point uses by mature organizations. Well, Capers-Jones, who some of you may have seen at previous SoftTech conferences, provided me with this table. He took a look at a lot of different software, global software projects. And if you take a look, we've got the large European ones. He said the number of projects started that were 10,000 function points or larger per year, this is an annual number of projects, is 2,000. The 1,000 function point projects, it's about 30,000. Troubled projects, troubled, he says, are canceled, delayed, overrun, or poor quality. So those are the same type of ones that the Standish group says are troubled, that are over budget, behind schedule, or do not deliver properly. Do you encounter any of those types of projects at all here in Malaysia? No? Okay, you guys are great. So if we take a look at this, 20% of large European projects are being outsourced. 65% are using function points. That seems extremely high to me. But these are the mature organizations. If you're doing 10,000 function point larger projects, those are very large projects. 15% are using parametric estimates. Now, Italy is mandated to use function points for all of their publicly tendered projects. So that's why that's high. Spain is also a very big proponent. The large Asia Pacific, you can see that the function point usage is down. Parametric estimating is a little bit higher. Large South American and large Central American, Brazil is a country where function points is mandated and has been for quite a number of years. Then we've got the large Russian. Russians are not using function points. Then we've got large Arab, Middle East, 4%, large African, and the US total comes in right underneath there with 46%. So globally, we've got about 42% adoption of function points. I'd challenge that. I would say it's more likely throughout the world, probably about 10 to 15%. I meet people on planes all the time and they ask me what I do, and I say, well, I'm involved in software, and they go, oh, so am I. I say, okay, And I say, I do software metrics. And they go, what? I say, well, I do function points. And they go, what? And they've never heard of it. So I would say we're much closer to the parametric estimating level of what the adoption actually is. And it's mandated by Brazil, Italy, Malaysia. Japan, I'm not entirely sure to what degree it used to be. And South Korea, I'm not 100% sure whether they're actually using function points, because it kind of comes and it goes. So the number one use and the number one place that I see function points fitting in is in software contracting. That's where we can use unit pricing in terms of currency per function point. This truly balances the risk. In the United States, we still are dominantly, especially in major US government contracts, doing firm fixed price. Why would we do firm fixed price? Well, because the supplier takes 100% of the risk, or we use time and materials. And then the customer takes 100% of the risk. When we do unit pricing, we can be highly flexible to change, and it's a cost per function point. There's government directives in a number of countries, and there's mandated and optional provisions. So we can use it for proposal evaluation. Brazil was adding up how many function point specialists, how many certified function point specialists were on a team. That was one of their original uses of function points in their proposals. Legislation may govern, and there's a difference between pricing versus costing models. But this has been very successful. Number two, parametric cost estimation. Parametric cost estimation, we've got a number of commercial products, including things like Kokomo 2, Cost Expert, Knowledge Plan, SEER, SLIM, Software Risk Master, True Price, where we put a number. It asks you for a functional size of software on the input side. And you can use function points. In some cases, you can use RICE-F objects. But it provides you with a line in the sand of how big is this piece of software we're going to be taking a look at. Now, it's parametric, which means it's not linear. So I get a lot of calls with people saying, what is the average cost per function point to build? Or what is the average amount of time per function point? And that's like saying, what is the average cost per square meter to build? Can you tell me that? If I asked you in the front row, what would be the average cost per square meter to build something? You'd look at me like I was crazy. You'd say, well, do you want to build an airline hangar? Do you want to build an apartment? Do you want to build a hospital? Is it going to be in Canada or the United States or where in the world? And if I say, well, I haven't decided yet, that's the same thing as asking, what's the average cost per function point? It's exactly the same. It depends on what you're building. It's truly just the size. So this is the second most popular and second most beneficial use of function points, is to really have an input into parametric cost estimation. Estimating accuracy, estimates based on function point sizing are producing the most accurate estimates. Now, I'd never say that you should only ever use one estimating method. If it's important to you, if it's a $75 million contract, do you want to hang your hat, as we say in the United States? Would you want to bet your career on one number? No way. You want to make sure that you've got multiple methods of doing an estimate. Because if one of your estimating methods says it'll cost $5 million, and another estimating method says $40 million, which one's right? You want to make sure if it's going to actually cost you $40 million that that's what you've bid. Outsourcing management. This is another very effective use of function points because it provides you with an objective size that you can use in estimating and to manage your suppliers. Supplier payment may be based on function point delivery. So the supplier doesn't get paid until there's actually something delivered. The negotiation of pricing can be based on past performance. So the delivery of the last 2 or 3 years. I've been on outsourcing contracts where they've included reward and penalty mechanisms. That if your delivery is a certain level and your quality in terms of defects per function point has to meet a certain level, then there's a reward or penalty. It may include unit pricing, and it can be used for offshore or other places. So the US does a lot of outsourcing to India. I know Germany does outsourcing to Latvia, which I found interesting, because they don't want time zone differences. Europe and China. And it's also becoming used as a basis for insourcing. The United States is now bringing a lot more things back onshore. So we need statistics and we need numbers. And if we can prove that quality is better in one alternative versus another, it's beneficial. Now, what does this mean to you? If you're doing software as a service and competing, if you can take a look and say your defect density in terms of things that you find or your pre-delivery, your quality is higher, then you can take a look at defect density and compete on that level. Number 4, formal scope management. There's southern scope from Australia. There's northern scope that's being used in Finland, Sweden, Denmark, and Germany, where instead of having a firm fixed price or a time and materials, the contractor and the customer work together. There's a training curriculum that I've been involved with for northern scope in Finland. There's actually a certification for certified scope managers. It's customer driven with supplier collaboration. So right at the very beginning, before a contract is even let out or an RFP is issued, we do early estimates on the basis of estimated function points. The contract is based on unit pricing, and then it's flexible to change. In the same way as you would be going out and building a house, if we've negotiated and we've agreed that you're going to build me a house and it will cost me $300 or $3,000 a square foot, and as you're building, and you may be iteratively building a floor plan for me, I can keep track of how many square feet has been delivered. The same thing with function points. How many function points have been delivered? If there's changes, say for example, I say, you know, I really like those reports you were working on. I don't want them. Just throw them away. But add in these other ones instead. Does that ever happen? Do you ever have changes that happen on the fly? Were they free? The customer thinks they're free. But it's kind of like saying, oh, I've built those walls there and I really don't like that, so could you just push the wall out by 3 feet or 2 meters and take all of the electrical and the plumbing with it? Just stretch them out 2 meters and just put that wall over here and then I'll pay for it. Would a construction manager ever do that? No, they've got a wall built there. And I say, well, I don't like it. My kitchen has to be bigger. And they hand me a change order and they say, we'd be happy to do that for you. However, we have to redo the plumbing and the electrical and that framed wall. We can do that with software. We can say, okay, you don't want that report? It's 60% built. So we'll charge you 60% of the function points for the work we've already done, and then your new reports, we'll charge you 100% for those. There's no blame. There's nobody saying, oh, I'm really sorry, I should have told you this, and I'm really embarrassed, and I can't believe that report. My boss is going to be, oh, he's going to be so upset when he finds out that I built that report, or I've asked for that report. No, there's no blame, because changes happen, and you need to be adaptable to that. So the customers and the suppliers work together in terms of delivery. And the scope manager acts as kind of an advocate between the customer and the supplier. The top 10 reasons that the Chaos report, the Standish Group, published for project failure. If you take a look at the top 10 reasons, 60% of these are scope related. So if we can take a look and really manage the scope of a project before it happens, we can solve a lot of those issues. Failure to gain user commitment. Well, a lot of times users don't want to be engaged. I don't know what it's like here, but a lot of times when you ask users to come to a meeting, they don't get excited. They don't say, yes, I get to meet with all of the software developers today. Yes, I couldn't sleep last night. No, it's more like, I think I have a dental appointment. Mister, couldn't you go in my place? I think you have to meet with those people this week. People don't get excited. But if we're talking their language, if we're talking the customer's language, based on functionality, not based on technical code, then we have a chance. Maturity assessment and process improvement is another one of the top uses for function points. Level 2 and 3 of CMMI outlines measurement criteria. Software product size in terms of the requirement size, in terms of the scope of what you're working on, in terms of what am I actually building? We can quantify that. There's an approach in the United States called practical software and systems measurement, which actually takes a look at how do you create and what measures should you use. There's also a method called goal question metric. Now, goal question metric, I think, is absolutely critical if you're starting any measurement program at all. And I'm going to use an analogy for this. A lot of times what I see IT groups, testing groups do, is somebody says you need to start measuring. So what's the thing we usually do? Okay, what should we measure? How about test cases? What do you think? Number of test cases, would that be good? Yeah, yeah. So somebody writes it down and says, yeah, let's collect that. What else should we collect? Time, yes, time's important. Let's write down time. And we end up collecting all this data and then trying to fit it into something that's going to make a difference. Well, let's consider, I live in Florida, so let's just play a game for a minute. I'm going to invite all of you over to my house for dinner, okay? And I live really close to the Gulf of Mexico, so we have like beautiful sunsets. And I live in a condo that I rent, and there's a pool. So how many of you want to come over to my house for dinner? Okay, there's a few of you. So I'm going to have you all over, and you've all RSVP'd. And so I get home, and I go, why did I do that? I've got like 400 people coming over. What should I do? And I pull out some recipe books, and I go, okay, maybe I'll make, I don't know, maybe moussaka, eggplant and some cheese. Yeah, that would be good. Lots of people like that. And I go, well, maybe I should make fruit salad. Yeah, okay, that would be good. And so I start taking a look at the recipe books, and I say, you know what, this isn't working. I'm going to go shopping. So I go to my local grocery store, and I start walking through the produce section, and I say, oh, mangoes are on sale. Yes. I put a whole bunch of mangoes into my cart. And then I go and I see papayas on sale, and I go, papaya looks great on a plate, doesn't it? So I throw all that in. And I start walking up and down the aisles, and I see that wild rice is on sale. This is great. So I pile a bunch of wild rice in, and I go through the store this way, and I get to the end, and I pay for it, and I check out. I get all the ingredients home, and I say, boy, this was great. I sure hope I can cook something up with all these ingredients. That's what we do with data. We go and we collect all this data from all over the place, and it's really easy and it's fun. And some of it our management is going to be so thrilled at, right? And we're going to create great charts. And at the end of our measurement, we go, I hope we can cook this up into something that's going to make a difference. Goal question metric says start with your goals, start with the recipe, start with what you want to accomplish. Then you ask, what are the questions I need to ask to know whether I'm reaching those goals? So initially your goal may be, I want to improve the productivity by 20% by the end of December. Or it may be, I want to improve my estimating accuracy by 10% by the end of... I have to have a quantifiable goal. And then I can ask the questions, where am I at today? How have I improved? And then and only then can we start saying, what are the metrics we need? Shopping and collecting metrics, yeah, that's the fun part. But we'll never succeed in measurement unless we've gone through and quantified what we're trying to achieve. So goal question metric is really important, especially when we're taking a look at things like process assessments, process improvements. SPICE has measurement criteria. Function points can be a common denominator in measurement programs. So defect density. Do you know about defect density? The number of defects per function point delivery. If you just have the raw number of defects, what's that tell you? I was on a project one time with a utility company, and they said, Carol, we don't need function points. I said, really? They said, we have this quality program where we are measuring the number of defects. I said, really? They said, yeah, we bring in a team, and we sit down in front of them, and we say, 300 defects on that release. That's really high. And we say, why did you have that many defects? And they look at each other and they go, well, we tested, we went through the processes. This was a really big project. And the utility company said, we look at each other and we just go, okay, dismissed. They said, and then we bring in another team, and the next team had 100 defects. And we say, way to go, you've done a great job. What did you do? And they go, well, we reduced our testing time. And we look at each other and we go, okay, there's got to be some information on that. And what was happening is the teams were realizing that if they did smaller releases, the number of defects would go down, and then they would basically be under the radar. So their numbers would look better. So they were starting to subdivide their projects into mini, mini, mini releases so that when they came in and they'd be interviewed, the management team would say, oh, your team only had 50 defects on that release. Way to go. And they'd go, yeah, we didn't do anything. But by doing defect density, number of defects per size, that's like saying the number of defects per square foot. So if you know that there's some major defects on a very, very large project, that's not a high defect density. And you can start really taking a look at common denominator things. It's like saying liters per kilometer. It gives you a common denominator. Team productivity, you can start taking a look at things like function points per person month, or the product delivery rate. How many hours does it take to deliver a function point given this technology, given this team size, given these parameters? We can start taking a look at things like maintenance and support rates. How many full-time equivalents does it take to keep this system up and running? And that's similar to utility rates. How much does it cost per square meter to heat your house or to cool it? We can start taking a look at comparisons based on common denominators. Number 6, the International Software Benchmarking Standards Group. This was established in 1994, and it's specific to function points. It now has over 8,000 projects in its database. Its goal was to develop the profession of software measurement by establishing a common vocabulary and an understanding of the terms. It's non-commercial. Anybody in the world can access the International Software Benchmarking Standards Group database for a cost. The projects are submitted double-blind. Data quality is absolutely critical, and it's tracked. They issue special reports. They issue agile reports, team size reports, government reports, a lot of different things. And the IceBags repository is actually included in a lot of software parametric equations. It's also the basis of 29155 project performance benchmarking standards, which are standards that are currently being developed by ISO. Number 7, really, the purpose of function points is to evaluate our software product size. So we can take a look at the requirements completeness. Now, you'll notice this new development percentage here. So on average, interface function points, if I have a piece of software in a new development project, I should have about 30% of the function points should be inputs. So create, update, delete, merge, all of that type of thing with my data should come from inputs. Output should be about 25%. Queries, browses, about 16%. So given this information, if you have a set of requirements and you've taken a look at the functional requirements and recorded them, and you find out that there's absolutely no outputs, what should that tell you? You're missing something. So one of my colleagues from Australia said that she was on a project. It was a firm fixed price project. Her supplier went and measured everything, came up with 500 function points. So they did an analysis and they said, how many are attributed to reports? They said none. So what do you mean none? And the customer came back and said, well, reports, we always define reports at the end of the project. So they would have had 25% typically that they didn't account for. Who's going to pay for that? Well, we can fight about it. Fights never win. So we can do sizing by analogy. If you have absolutely no information, but you need to do a cost, does that ever happen? Or you might have 2 lines. I've seen million-dollar projects budgeted based on 2 lines of information. We're going to have a financial system in place by the end of the year. How much will it cost? Well, if we know that it should be about a medium-sized project, and in my database I've got a lot of medium-sized projects, I can do a comparison. And I can say, well, it looks like it's probably about 1,000 function points. And that's my line in the sand, so to speak. In other words, that's how big I thought it would be. And it gives me something to start with. We can take a look at the user acceptance test coverage, because the functions that we identify and we quantify should be the ones you're testing, shouldn't they? If you're not testing every single function that I've got there, or if you're testing additional functions that are not defined, that's a mismatch. And that's very helpful at the beginning of a project to know about that, rather than after it's built. Evaluation of alternatives, we can take a look at a bunch of different packages and declare the functional fit. We can take a look at the replacement of systems. So if I have a system in place today and I'm going to replace it, I can count the function points on that and use that as a basis for my next replacement project, because I know it's going to contain a lot of the same functions. I can take a look at whether my requirements are good, because if they're not good, I can't count them. And if I can't count function points and you're going into development, what are you building? If you say, well, I can't define what fields will go on that report. I can't tell you what files it's going to access. I can't tell you where the data is going to come from. My question to you would be, so how are you going to build it and code it? And somehow there's magic that must occur in some of these software development organizations, because how they build things that nobody knows what they want, I'm not sure. If you can't define it, you can't build it. We've got a lot of shortcut methods that you can use as well. There's something called the one file or rule of 31, that for every entity you define, it's typically 31 function points. It's an add, a change, a delete, a read, and a query. So we can take a look at that type of thing. And with snap points, which are my software non-functional, it gives me a complete sizing. Number 8, proposal evaluation or proposal preparation. I can take a look at comparing supplier bids. We can take a look at pricing, unit pricing, and product size. We can evaluate the pricing. So if I have 2 bids that come in, and we have very, very large government contracts, and I know you do as well. So if you are a customer, or if you're in the government, and you send out an RFP, and one bid comes in and says 5 million, one bid comes in and says 9 million. What do? You look at both bids and you say, well, there must be a difference. somehow underneath there must be a difference in assumptions. But if you've sized it yourself and you've run a parametric model and it's come out and said, your parametric estimates have come out and said it should be about 6 million, you've got a 5 million and you've got a $9 million bid, there's got to be a difference. And that gives you the basis of being able to go forward and say, okay, what did you do differently to get $9 million? You can also issue requests for proposals with function point provisions in them. So the response must be sized in function points. So if one supplier comes back and says, it looks like 1,000 function points, and another supplier comes back and says, it looks like 3,000 function points, that tells you a big difference right there. I know in the United States, if IBM comes in and says it's going to be $6 million, and General Dynamics says it's going to be $8 million, and Accenture says it's going to be $40 million, the customers are confused. And they say, well, what's the difference? And the response often is, well, we're better. We've got better coverage. You need to have it quantified. And it gives you a common understanding of the scope. Gives you a basis. It doesn't do everything, and I need to qualify this. Function points are not good for everything. They're the square feet for software. If you're not doing software development, if you're doing a training project, entirely a training project, and you're going to train 1,000 users, can I use function points to give me a good estimate? No. It's similar to saying, if I'm going to be doing a landscaping project, can I use a construction equation based on square feet to give me a good estimate of my landscaping project? With my trees and my sod? Not at all. What about site selection? What if I'm going and figuring out where I should build my house? And I'm going to have to clear the lot, and I'm going to have to do research. Will square feet help me on that? Not at all. In the same way that if I'm doing operational system design, if I'm doing research and development, if I'm doing maintenance, if I'm doing configuration, can function points help me there? If all I have is a hammer, we say everything looks like a nail. So don't use, just know that even though I'm advocating that function points can be used in many places, it's not a Swiss Army knife. It does very, very good job of doing one thing: quantifying and analyzing the functional user requirements. But it will give us a common understanding of scope. Number 9, insurance valuation and litigation. The US Internal Revenue Service actually allows for function point valuations of software. So if I am purchasing a company, if I'm purchasing any company, and I have to evaluate what is that software asset and what are their teams worth, I can value the software assets in terms of how much I paid for that particular company in terms of function points. And they'll accept that. And we've got a lot of expert witness cases. We have more lawyers in the United States than all of the other countries in the world combined. Did you know that? And we keep creating new lawyers all the time. That's not necessarily a good thing at all. But we've got a lot of expert witness cases, things like infringement. I'm actually involved in an expert witness case right now where one company infringed on the rights of another company. And this has been an 8-year, 7 legal firms situation. They've sued and countersued and countersued, and I'm just now getting involved, and it's very interesting. But the infringement, the non-delivery, if you have to cancel a project, malicious behavior, cancellation, contract termination, all of those things in terms of valuing the software, if we're doing software development, it can be sized and can be estimated in function points. And number 10, this I find pretty interesting, price to win and other estimates. I'm on a team actually that does a lot of engineering design. So there will be a price to win situation. Price to win means how much will Accenture charge, how much would General Dynamics charge, how much would IBM charge, how much would other companies charge. So one of the companies that I work for, we get hired and we're an entire team of engineers. My background is mechanical engineering. So we're hired to go in, do design, plus the software piece that we measure in function points, plus hardware that other people do, and all of that gets added up, put through parametric models to come up with a price to win that we can advise our clients. We've got micro and macro-based estimating models. And there's a ton of information that's been published by the International Software Benchmarking Standards Group. We can do a fog test of estimates. How much work effort should it take? Is it even a possibility? And some of the parametric tools will give us it's impossible. So if I came to you and said, could you build a hospital and have it up and running by next month? What would you say? Okay, I'm going to give you, I'll give you a lot of extra money. Can you have a hospital built within 1 month and have all the approvals and everything done? What do you think? Not a hospital I want to be in. But we do that in software. Could you get this system of, we don't even know what to call it because we haven't even done the acronym for it. We don't know what we're going to call it. Could you get this done in 6 months? No, it's impossible. We can have software models that will prove it's impossible. It's not the fact that we're not a good team. It's the fact it can't be done. And we can show that through history. We can take a look at defects in pricing, the work breakdown structure. And the last one I think is really important. History is a much better predictor than theoretical models. So one of the things that a lot of companies will do is they'll actually do an estimate based on function points initially. So if I've thought it's 500 function points, for example, I run it through my parametric estimates, it comes out and it says $2 million. Now what happens? Life. So we start doing the project and everything changes, right? We've got new reports. It really wasn't 500 function points. It ends up being different. And we've got changes. We've got all sorts of things happen. And finally, at the very end, we deliver software and we're excited. And this was great. And what do? We go into the next project. We're missing something. We're missing something huge. At the end of the project, we can now take a look at how big was it actually delivered. How big was that work effort to change all the things? How big was the project really? Was it 500 function points? No, it actually was 1,000. And what was the effort estimate that we came up with in the first place for that 500? Okay, it was this big. How big was it for the 1,000? This big. So we should, at the end of the project, when we know everything, if you don't know what's going on at the end of the project, then you've got bigger problems. But at the end of the project, you know how big the software product was. You know how much effort it took. We should run those numbers through our estimating equation because guess what? History is going to happen again. So we can take a look and calibrate our models and say, is it high or low? Because normally what happens is we don't learn that. We get to the end of a project and we say, thank goodness that's finished. Let's get on to the next one. And we fail again. And our estimates don't get any better. So the top 10, these are a bunch of different reasons that we've gone through all of them on best practices with function points. Are they going to solve everything? Not at all. Are they going to work everywhere? No. It all depends on what you've got to try and do. So steps to a sustainable measurement program. Sustainable change, if you're going to adopt any of these things, you really need to have something called POWER, which is an acronym that stands for the predisposition is the P, that you can see success in your organization. If you don't have that, if your management says, go ahead and measure, it's going to fail. I can predict that you will fail. Outlook, that you can say we will do it. We can solve that. We can accomplish it. The wherewithal, do we have the skills in place? Do we have the training? Evaluation, are we going to measure it? Are we going to track and see whether we're actually accomplishing it? And will we commit the resources to it? Doesn't matter what kind of change you're going to implement in your organization, you need to have the power to do it. Tom Gilbs said, motivation moves mountains. Motivation is everything. And that truly is what changes our organizations. Critical success factors, the only way you're going to succeed with measurement or with your testing maturity model or with anything you're trying to change in Malaysian IT is to truly have a pressure for change. If you don't care, if it doesn't matter, it's not going to work. Leadership and vision, capable people, actionable first steps, and effective rewards. Those are all critical success factors. And with that, I'd just like to say thank you. I hope that being open for a little bit, and I don't even know what time it is. What time are we on? I'm kind of close. I think I'm about where I was supposed to be. I'd just like to say thank you. I'm going to be doing an introduction to what are function points in a little bit more detail later today, and then a tutorial on Thursday, 2 tutorials on Thursday. And I'd just like you to think a little bit. If the only thing I've left you with today is the fact that you guys are the leaders. You are the future. And I don't care if you're 50 or 20. You're the future of IT profession in Malaysia and throughout the world. So thank you.